What's up, everyone? How's it going? I hope you're all doing great, and if you're hearing this, they let us get to Friday again. So, it's time for another episode of TheLeaf podcast, or mini podcast, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, in this video, I originally intended it for it to be like a haunted hospitals kind of thing. You know, haunted hospitals, haunted asylums, EMT stories and all that. And this is because that I've heard some stories recently, and I thought that I would share them with you. But over the course of me thinking how I might format the video, what I might talk about in it, it kind of evolved into just a general kind of shadow people video. And I'll still tell a couple of the stories that people who work in healthcare told me, but when I kind of thought of the shadow people idea, I don't think I've done a video on shadow people in a very long time, if I have at all. So, to start us off at this very beginning, what do you think shadow people are? There's a great deal of kind of, I want to say mysticism around them, or just mysteriousness, because some people think that they're straight up demons. Some people think that they're humans from another kind of parallel universe. Some people think that they're its own entity entirely, and that they're from a different dimension. And that's why you start to see them whenever you're sleep deprived, because they say that sleep is what ties us to this reality, and that the longer you go without sleep, the weaker those barriers get for you, and the more you start to see things that are around. That's definitely one of the more interesting theories I've heard. A lot of people seem to think that they're just demons, that they're some kind of supernatural entity like a ghost, but just kind of in shadow form. There's lots of ideas about what they could be, and it's not like you can just go up and ask them what they are. So this first one, and I'll post the link to the article in the description, this person seems to think that they're all demons. And they encountered these shadow people because, of course, they were playing with a Ouija board. And I'll just say what they say about it. I'm pretty sure that the shadow people are demons. One night, I was having a party and I had just gotten a Ouija board for my birthday. Everyone talked me into using it, so we started playing. Then, weird stuff started happening. Shadow figures started to appear in my room. A lot of shadow people. It wasn't any of our shadows. These shadows were different. Some of them had red eyes. Then red orbs started coming in through my room. We had made a protective circle, and we had all tried to stay in it. It got really cold in my room, and we could see our breaths. There were some of my friends that couldn't see the shadow people, but they could feel them. There was an all-out evil feeling in the room. We all got too freaked out to move. We were just like, whoa. And then one of the shadow people changed. It got all scary looking. I could explain, but I don't want to go into detail. Let's just say Pumpkinhead, the demon guy from scary movies. No, his head is not a pumpkin. So we screamed and finally ran out of the room. My parents thought that we were crazy. That night, when we went to bed, my closets were glowing red and orbs were coming through my room. We didn't sleep at all until like 5 a.m. And even then, we only slept not even 4 hours. That was freaky. And stuff didn't die down for a while after that. That was the last time I used the Ouija board. I threw it somewhere deep down in one of my closets. Now I've only used psychic circles, and even that has consequences. I'm not allowed to use it anymore because of what happened to me, my friend, and my mom. But that's another story for another time. So already from the get-go, I have to wonder who gifts a person a Ouija board. That's not something I would ever do personally, but you do you. One other thing about this is the protection circle that they say to stay in. Now, a lot of people may not know. A lot of people that watch this channel may know, but a lot of other people may not know that the protection circle only works if your faith is strong, and it only works if you believe it to work. An example is kind of like that movie The Skeleton Key, where the voodoo or hoodoo, whatever they called it, only works if you believe it works. But not quite the same. It's just like the same kind of faith-based thing. I also didn't really like that movie either. But that's besides the point. And whenever they got up and ran off from it, that's just leaving it totally open to whatever is going to come through. And the fact that it even stopped is kind of a miracle in its own right. And I have had one experience. I never used the Ouija board, don't worry about that, I don't touch the things. But somebody else did in this house, and it kind of screwed the whole house up. And it's still screwed up to this day. And the reason why I picked this particular chunk of the article to read out is because it reminds me of this experience that I had. Now, this would have been in 2016, I believe. Now, I had heard this story a couple times, but it was different this time because I heard it from somebody who lived nearby the area. And even though this particular house was kind of in disrepair by this time because nobody was in it, it was just kind of an urban legend at this point. Because you know how, like, in a community when something happens, especially something supernatural or paranormal, you give it 10 years, give it 20 years, and a lot of the newer people, like the younger people, don't know about it. The older people don't want to talk about it because it's not fresh anymore. And even if they do, they say, oh, well, I don't know. That's what I heard anyways. I'm not sure if other places do that, but that's the language we use. It's like people are so terrified for other people to think that they're weird for believing in ghosts, even if they've seen something. With me, I'm like, no, I believe in them. 100%, I've seen them. There we go. Now, do I have physical proof these things happen? Do I have video? No, I don't. So it's kind of like take my word for it kind of thing. And I think that's why a lot of people don't want to talk about the stuff, because if you don't have evidence, then a lot of people just dismiss you as crazy. But anyways, I'm kind of off track from what I was going to talk about here, this story. So this story was that in this 2-story house, in this neighboring community, I won't say which one it is because I don't want people to like go there and all that stuff, because you might get hurt. Not because of the people there, but because the house is in bad condition, and if people go in, it's in disrepair, you don't want to get hurt there. So anyways, it's in a neighboring community, and allegedly what happened in the 1990s or very early 2000s is that there was a party there one night, and in similar fashion, they had a Ouija board. In this case, the Ouija board was upstairs. Now, when they used it, apparently nothing happened, and everybody thought, oh, well, that's stupid. And then they just went back downstairs to continue drinking. And then, apparently about 20 minutes later, they realized that the guy who was hosting the party, like the teenager, the guy in their early 20s that was at this house, they were missing. So they started kind of looking around the floor for them, trying to see like if, oh, maybe they drank too much and they were just like laying on the couch or something. But they weren't. And then they hear a scream from upstairs. Before they can go upstairs, they see this guy backwards crab crawl down the stairs, just like something straight out of The Exorcist. And then he pukes all over the floor. But it wasn't puke, it was all blood. Obviously, everybody's freaked out. And then he's talking about how hot he feels, how his face is all red, and how he's sweating really bad. People originally thought that him crawling backwards down the stairs was like a prank, but I don't know anybody who would do that prank, because it sounds like a good way to like beat your head off the stairs, and the only thing you get out of it is a concussion. But anyways, so I think that they called the ambulance and that they took him out of the house, and as soon as he was taken out of the house, he was fine. He wasn't sweating anymore. He didn't have the fever anymore. He wasn't like overheating anymore. He wasn't puking anymore. It was gone. But then another girl who also, it might have been his sister, I think, that was living in the house with them, suddenly she started feeling really hot and faint. Of course, the people at the party who were drunk and not really thinking that what they saw was anything scary, the people that did had left by now. So they thought she was just getting sick, so they all left. Now, over the next few days, they had a big increase in activity, and this is where they started seeing shadow people. They were all through the house, specifically one that gave the vibe that it was a very angry male presence. And eventually, it came down to that the people that owned it just moved. And this house remained up for sale for the entire time that I was down there, over the 3 years or so. So anyways, what that brings me to is my story about shadow people. So one night, me and my now ex-girlfriend were walking up the road, and we were walking by this house, and suddenly we were hit by the smell of rotting garbage. And I already know this to be a sign of demons. That and the smell of sulfur. And it was kind of mixed in together. And I remember saying, I said, "Ew, do you smell that?" And then she looked at me and then looked at the house and immediately looked straight ahead and clutched this stone that she had around her neck. And I said, "What? What do you see?" And I looked over toward the house, and in the front picture window, you could see the 100% black shadow that was standing in the window, looking straight out at us. It looked like it even had its hand pressed against the window. And there was no lights on in the house because, obviously it's been abandoned and stuff. There were no lights on in the house, but this shadow person was blacker than black. And I could feel the rage radiating off this thing. It's like it was mad that it couldn't leave the house, that it wanted to take at us, but it couldn't. It was trapped behind the window, or that's the vibe I got from it anyways. So when I saw that, I grabbed her hand and I said, "Oh, nope." And I just made her cross the road, and we continued walking up the street to the store where we were going, and just on the way back, we just took a different way, didn't go past that house. A different time, the same year, it was later on in the year, probably in the fall, we had to walk past that place, and by this time nothing had happened, so the fear kind of wore off. We had to walk in between this house and a bank or whatever's there, and there's this door that was on the back of the house. There was some kind of upper deck, and there was a door that opened up to it, and didn't the door slam open and fall off of its hinges? And as soon as we looked up, in the darkness of that little hallway, we could see the same blacker than black shadow figure staring at us. Now, other people have had a lot more experiences with that particular house, but those are my only two things. And I guess you could make the argument that it was somebody in the house, like a squatter or something like that. But just the height and I don't know, it just didn't feel like a person, you know what I mean? You know, you can tell almost. It just didn't feel like a person. But anyways, those are my stories about shadow people. And of course, I still have the EMT story, so I have all kinds of stories for you this week. So there's this woman I know who works at a hospital. She's worked at clinics, hospitals, whatever. Not going to give her name because she didn't want her name on this. She says that she saw a shadow person jump into somebody, and then that person had a seizure. So basically, I don't know the names of any of the units in a hospital besides ICU and emergency, so, bear with me if you do. Basically, she was doing an overnight shift, and on this overnight shift, she was doing her rounds to check on the overnight patients, and one of them had been I don't know if they were in a medically induced coma, or if they were just sleeping, but they were injured in a car accident or something. And as she's walking along, she stops by this room just to kind of glance at the monitors and just make sure that she's still sleeping, that everything is okay. And while she's doing this, something catches her eye. There's this dim light that's in this hospital room, and she looks over toward where this thing that caught her eye is, and it's the shape of a person that's walking along the wall. And she watches it walk all along the wall to the shadow of the woman in the bed, and then it jumps into it like it's diving into a swimming pool. And then the woman in the hospital bed immediately starts having a seizure. She immediately called for help and then ran into the room to try and help her. And as they were, looking her over, trying to help her, the seizure eventually stopped. And then this other shadow climbed out of her shadow and walked along out the door to the other side of the room. It was really weird and really creepy, in my opinion. I would not want to see that anywheres. Hospitals kind of are weird for me anyways, so seeing that would just be like, well, I can tell where I don't want to be. And as far as I know, this woman made a full recovery. She was only there a couple days. But it was really weird how that whole thing happened. How a shadow jumped into hers, and then all this stuff began to happen. So that makes me wonder, like, what exactly are they? And this other one here, this may be the last one, I don't know yet. But this one was by far the most terrifying out of all of these, and it's never something that I would ever want to experience. And here it is. Something happened to me over 50 years ago now, and I've been trying to tell someone that can give answers or understands what I saw. I tell friends and family, and I get a blank stare, and then they change the subject. It was 1965, and I was 8 years old, and I lived in the northeast of England with my parents, 2 sisters, and a brother. I was the second oldest. One particular night, it must have been a weekend because I asked my mother if I could stay at my Nana's house. She took me, and I slept in the dining room on a fold-away bed. My grandparents both slept upstairs. I don't remember if there were any other adults in the house, but I was the only child there. The dining room was separated from the living room with a dark red velvet curtain. The curtains were closed after I was put to bed while my Nana probably watched TV. I do remember well that it was a very windy night. I could hear the wind battering against the windows, but I had no problem falling asleep. I was in a deep sleep when I heard a loud crack, which sounded like it came from the adjacent kitchen window. The kitchen was separated from the dining room by a door, and the door was closed. However, immediately after I heard the crack that woke me up, I heard someone climb through the window into the kitchen. I was terrified. I heard someone moving around the kitchen. I remember hearing paper rustling, and my heart was pounding. Suddenly, the door opened to the dining room where I was laying. I hid beneath the covers and was afraid that this burglar, or whoever it was, could hear me breathing. I could hear the blood pounding through my ears. Next, the curtains swooshed open. I didn't know what to do, so I started to pray and recited the Lord's Prayer under the covers. I have goose pimples as I write this, and as it brings back all these terrifying memories. All I could hear now was my heart pounding in my ears. I slowly peeked out of the blankets, and directly above and inches away from my face were 2 piercing luminous eyes with jet black pupils. I froze for several seconds before quickly returning to hiding under the covers. I did not see a face as the room was pitch black. The next thing I remember, I was screaming for help, and eventually someone came downstairs. I slept upstairs with someone. I think it was my aunt. The next day, I was told that I just had a bad dream. It was no dream. I went through several minutes of real fear that I will never forget. I was afraid of being alone and to sleep in the dark for a long time after that. It probably took years to get over. I don't know what I saw, but it was not human, and it was not an animal. Nothing has eyes like that in our world as we know it. This event changed my perception as an adult on what exists in the paranormal world, and I keep an open mind on everything. So what do you think that was? Do you think that it was some kind of shadow person, or do you think it was some kind of other entity? You know, I've heard other stories about not necessarily shadow people, but shadow entities. So again, I ask you the question, what are shadow people? Do you think that they are other entities that just kind of look humanoid, but aren't? Do you think that they're people from a parallel world? Do you think that they're all demons? Do you think there's something else? Let me know down in the comments. And with that, I think I will see you on Sunday. I hope you enjoyed this video and my rambling about shadow people, and if you did, then please like and subscribe and share the video, like the video, and comment and all that great stuff. And if you would like to donate to the channel, there's super thanks and memberships, as well as a PayPal donation and a Patreon, if you'd like to do all that stuff. And with that, I will see you on Sunday. Thank you for pulling up a stump. I hope you have a good weekend, and I hope to see you there.